I'm Tony Hagen, Senior Editor for the Center for Biosimilars. Today we're talking with Dr. Anurag Rathore, Coordinator of the Center for Excellence for Biopharmaceutical Technology in Delhi, India. In this interview, Dr. Rathore discusses his recent study on failed applications for biosimilar approvals. He also explains common reasons why applications are rejected, lessons to be learned, and the evolution of biosimilar regulatory approval. Can you tell me what made you decide to do this study?
So biosimilars, are gradually increasing in numbers. So it's kind of, so when they started 10 years ago, I think people were quite doubtful how successful they will be. And they actually had a pretty rough time for the first 5 years or so, because even if, drugs got approved, it took basically a long time for them to get a decent market share, right? But now I think uh, it is fairly, I think, accepted everywhere, including the US. The US actually traditionally has been the most conservative market, and I think it continues to be the most conservative with respect to biosimilars. But I think even in the US market now, it is becoming, more accepted. So in physicians and patents, right, and patients both feel that yes, this is okay, and if it reduces my healthcare bill, then yes, this is fine, right? So I think now I thought, after looking at the number of approvals and products, we thought that now it's probably worth looking at that. Okay, what are the reasons why some of these things have failed, right? Because if I were to do this, like say 5 years ago, I really wouldn't have many examples, or not much would have happened by then. So it would have been difficult to write this article.
Mm-hmm. Um, so, what's significant about some of the reasons for the rejected applications and the reasons for withdrawals of applications? What are you finding? What did you find, can you say?
Yeah, so I mean, so when we did this kind of a survey, I mean, it's not really research in the sense, not like we are doing new stuff, right? But it was more of looking at the information that is available through the regulatory websites and trying to see, what are the major reasons. So we found, so again, the first one was issues with comparability, which I'm not surprised, because again, comparability obviously is a major, kind of a major regulatory expectation for a biosimilar drug. So it's not surprising that that also becomes a major hurdle, because that's one of the most common reason why an application would get rejected. But then I was a bit surprised by things like process validation and GMP, and some of these things you'll see that they are being, some of these rejections are happening to pretty large companies. I mean, even companies like Amgen, right, or Mylan. I mean, these are companies that have gone through many products and many kind of approvals, right? That they know what is required. But it seems to me that, I think in general, most of the rejections are obviously from smaller companies, and I think it's just because they are maybe smaller, and in general, biosimilar manufacturers tend to be with somewhat limited resources compared to the larger major innovator companies. Uh, so I guess it just, I would say, lack of experience probably. So lack of experience with respect to what are the expectations in terms of having proper process control, following good manufacturing practices, how to do validation, stuff like that. So I think maybe that's what it was. But I was surprised by how many rejections were actually on that basis.
So, what connections can you draw that would be instructive to manufacturers or applicants? What can they learn from the failed applications that might help them be
Yeah.
more successful? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at least what I learned was that, I mean, again, this is my gut feeling. Of course, you have to ask a regulator this question, but the expectation from a biosimilar manufacturer is no less than, say, from a major, manufacturer of a innovator product. And in some ways, I feel maybe it's more because the regulators are worried about, approving something which already is, going through a limited clinical examination, right? So the last thing they want is obviously a shoddy product which ultimately ends up hurting the patients. So in some ways, I mean, that's my gut feeling. The regulator is the one, who can answer this question. But I feel that they are actually they basically look at these quality uh, aspects in some ways harder than they would, like, say, in a normal molecule. So for manufacturers, the point is that you do need to invest, in making sure that your process understanding, your product understanding, your GMPs, the way you're manufacturing. So all these things are done, as an Amgen or a Roche or any of these major companies would do. So don't cut corners basically on these things, because ultimately that's what will get you.
Can you say something further on where applications are typically breaking down? Are there any areas where companies are repeatedly failing that they could be more careful about or more aware of?
Yeah, so I feel that, I think so. If you look at all the issues, you can kind of classify them into two parts. One is the scientific part of it, which is basically whether you have a molecule which is actually similar to the innovator molecule, right? That's a very fundamental question. And of course, if you don't have it, then you're not going to get approved, right? Because it will show up in your compatibility studies, it's going to show up in your clinical compatibility studies, and so at the end of the day, it's going to get rejected, right? But like I said, there is a sizable number of rejections where the issue was not so much that the molecule is not comparable. The molecules were actually comparable, but the problem was that the manufacturer had not, you know, the way they had developed the process, the way they were doing the manufacturing was not as per the regulatory expectations as of today. So to me, that's more of a system issue, right? So you have the right molecule, but you have flaws in your system, in your quality system, basically, uh, and that like it has been shown in many cases that itself can be a problem. So the regulator is not only worrying about the molecule, it's also actually worried about your ability to make the same product with the same purity and same quality over in the future, right? Because, and that's rightly so, because there's no point of them giving you approval today if you can't make the same product the same way tomorrow, right? So that's the thing, and I think that's something which, uh, and it's mainly because I feel that a lot of these companies that are doing biosimilar production, have not really had any experience with therapeutic protein approval process or manufacturing process. So it's just a new thing, and I think it's a natural cycle where over time I'm sure they will learn. And I think you'll see that in most of these cases where people had rejections, they ended up actually eventually getting approval. So they figured out what is to be done, they did it, and eventually they got approved. So I think it's over time, manufacturing of biotherapeutics will become as commonplace as manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, right? So it won't be such a big deal or such a niche market anymore.
Do you think that these companies are getting enough information from the originator companies to handle the manufacturing side of it?
Well, I mean, the companies obviously are not getting any information from the innovator companies. I mean, no innovator company would give you anything at all. But I think what's happening is, so I've been in this industry for almost like 25 years now, and I remember that when I started in this business, the whole concept of manufacturing of a biologic was considered very novel. So there were very few companies in the whole world who actually had biological products approved, who had a manufacturing facility that can make these products, right? Then I think somewhere around say 2000 or so, uh, the maps came to the market, and they were considered, very novel molecules, extremely complex molecules, very difficult to make, right? So it was quite an art actually to do mammalian cell culture. I still remember in early 2000 that even larger companies, Genentech, Amgen, all these big companies struggled actually to do large scale manufacturing with mammalian cell culture because contamination was a major issue. Eventually, of course, people have figured it out. Today, I think it has become, I mean, if you were to do a count, I would not be surprised that probably more than 1,000 manufacturers around the world are capable of making map products today, right? So I think it is gradually getting commoditized. uh, I wouldn't call it a commodity today, but I'm pretty sure like say 10 years from now, these will be, fairly considered, at least fairly easy to make products that many people will be making, right? So I think it's just a learning curve for all of us to get there, and I'm sure eventually we will.
Related question to the manufacturing process. Oftentimes, it's said that the patents covering a product have to do with the manufacturing process rather than the formulation. Um, so, if you're a company that wants to produce biosimilars, sometimes you have to work around the processes that the originator company is using. Is that correct? And do you feel that that's an impediment to that is also part of this picture?
Sure. So, I mean, you're absolutely right that the manufacturing process, like I said, over time it has become simpler, and part of the reason is that in say early 2000s, I think you had few people who had this kind of experience, right? But over time, now it's like almost 2020, right? So 20 years later, now you have many people who have extensive experience in manufacturing of these products. So the biosimilar companies obviously have also benefited from this, right? Because they now have access to resources like that, right? Of course, a lot of these smaller companies are relying on contract manufacturers, so there are a lot of contract manufacturers who are obviously quite capable of making these products safely. So I think, but I think companies are, I mean, an area which I did not cover in this article, but it is interesting is that uh, because you are aiming for biosimilarity and you are planning to get approval, from the regulatory agency that my molecule is quite similar to another molecule. Actually companies are imitating technology exactly what the innovators are doing, right? So they just basically aim to just copy exactly the same process platforms, the same analytical platforms that the manufacturers do, and in some ways that actually adds up to the cost of these products. So you'll notice that biosimilars are cheaper, say 30-40% cheaper than innovator drugs, but it's not like the pharmaceutical products, right? In the case of pharmaceutical products, prices can go to 5% or 10% of the original price, right? So you don't see that kind of savings. And I think if you look at the accessibility, and I'm digressing from the article now, but if you look at accessibility of these products, around the world, is very poor, right? So the prices are just too high for, I would say, the majority of the world, actually, right? So there is a need to dramatically reduce the prices of these products, which unfortunately, because again, everybody is copying the same process platform, the same expression systems, I mean, we are not able to get there. So, but I'm hoping that over time, this too will change.
Okay. Um, so guidelines, do you feel that guidelines are clear enough, or that these need refinement in Europe and in the United States to improve the, to reduce the failure rate in the manufacturing and application process?
Yeah, so I mean that argument, I'm not sure whether that is really anything to do with biosimilars, because you're right. I mean, there is an effort, obviously, from regulatory agencies to reduce, failure rate in manufacturing, to improve quality of the product. But that kind of applies to all biotherapeutics, including biosimilars, right? In terms of guidance documents which are specific to biosimilars, I would say, I mean, the main benefit of having them is that for a manufacturer, they kind of tell you that what is expected, right? They normally do not tell you how to get there, but at least they tell you what is expected. And I think that is obviously quite helpful. And I think in that sense, the European, so EMA guidance documents are quite informative. The WHO document is also pretty good in that sense. So obviously the guidance document, especially EMA, I would say has done a lot for making these biosimilars successful. Otherwise, I think we would be at least 10 years behind where we are. So they actually get the credit for bringing the whole biosimilar product system today, where we are. And I'm glad that FDA is also now opening up, right? So now I think the mindset in FDA is gradually changing.
I think I got from your report that manufacturers might be rushing the process a bit to get their applications in, but a much more paced and careful process might, in the long run, be the shortest and most efficient for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what I meant was that, you know, because biotech products are manufactured, from living systems, there is an inherent variability in the quality of the product, right? So even that, people have done studies on even products that are manufactured by the innovator companies, and what they have seen is that if you look at the quality of a product over, say, a 10-year period or a 15-year period, you'll see that there is a considerable change in quality over that time, right? And the reason for that is that, with time, equipment change, processes get updated, so there are a whole lot of reasons why actually the process is changing, right? Now, as a biosimilar manufacturer, you have a problem because, you know, most generally biosimilar manufacturers will not have the kind of, data and information that an innovator company would have, right? Because innovator companies invest a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of studies before they get approval, right? So they have a huge database of information. Biosimilar manufacturers by design will never have that, right? That's the whole point. If they create the same database, then of course biosimilars will become as expensive as innovator drug, right? But as a downside to that, so what happens is that because you don't have that, that information, your aim is to try to create a process which will deliver a product which is, as similar to the innovator drug as possible, right? And the bar, and that's why I think when the regulators are looking at your process and your product, they are kind of so much harder on you to make sure that not just that you have the right product, but also in your ability to actually manufacture the same product, over and over again, right? So that's why I think in my paper I've said that, it's important that for a biosimilar manufacturer also to invest in your process and make sure that your process is capable of, producing a product which is consistent in quality.
Okay. Um, Quality by design initiative. You mentioned that in your report. Can you explain that a bit? and the significance?
So quality by design is a concept that FDA kind of pushed in 2000 towards the end of the 2000s, basically 2009, 2010 time frame. And basically, if I were to say it in very simple words, it's basically answering two questions. One is that how well do you understand your product, which means that what are the attributes of your product, how do those attributes affect the safety and efficacy of the product, right? So you need to answer that basically for your product. Similarly, the second question is, how does your process affect your product, right? Which basically means knowing what each step in your process is actually doing. How are you controlling that step? How are you making sure that your product at the end of your process is consistent in quality, right? So basically, quality by design means that for a manufacturer, you need to understand your product and you need to understand your process. And I think in the case of biosimilar manufacturer, the same argument kind of applies, right? You need to know your product, you need to know what attributes are important, because those are the ones you need to match the innovator product as closely as you can, right? And you need to know your process, because only then you will kind of figure out how to control my process so that my product is consistent in quality, right? So quality by design in that sense has pretty is quite relevant to a biosimilar manufacturer.
Ultimately, the regulatory intervention is a very positive process. Would you say that's a conclusion from the report? The number and type of rejections that are showing up are quite valid reasons for rejecting these processes or products as they move along.
Yeah. So so I mean, so there are two ways actually to look at it. One is, if you look at the rejections, you're absolutely right. At least I feel that most of the rejections are valid, and they are for the right reasons, and the manufacturer should have basically done what they did not, right? So they deserve to be rejected. But I also would like to say that in this business, uh, kind of a good way to put hurdle in a biosimilar manufacturer's path is to basically just keep asking for more information. So that won't show up in the rejection, right? Because in reality you never rejected the application. But if you basically ask for more and more comparative trials or larger and larger trials, then you see the whole thing becomes less and less attractive to a manufacturer, because then the manufacturers actually ended up spending the same amount of money as for the innovator drug, right? So that is something that I think particularly the US FDA has to kind of watch out for, because even today the kind of clinical program that they ask for is kind of more than most other jurisdictions, right? And that's the way, I mean, so it becomes a hurdle automatically, because not many companies can afford actually to give that kind of data. So hopefully over time, as the American regulators become more more at ease with biosimilars, so hopefully they will gradually lower that bar.
So let's compare the European regulatory environment and the FDA regulatory process with what's happening elsewhere in the world with biosimilars. Do you feel that standards are gradually moving up, or that other countries are basically relying on the FDA, the WHO, the EMA to do this job for them?
Yeah. I mean, so again, that is, I would say that's again less to do with the biosimilars. It's more of a general biotherapeutic question. Uh, I mean, you're absolutely right that obviously the EMA and the FDA are, by far the leaders in, deciding how to regulate these products. And a lot of countries, uh, depend on them, and simply because I think the level of expertise, the amount of experience, all these things are, many, I would say, an order of magnitude higher in these two agencies than say the next agencies, right? But part of the reason also is that if you look at the size of the market, right, that the US, is like more than half of the global market is just US, right? And then Europe is like another one third of the global market. So that also is a big reason why these regulators play a very important role, in setting the regulations, right? But I think over time, as other economies pick up, so China obviously has come up a long way. India is gradually rising, and so are many other economies, right? So as they become bigger, I would guess that you will have more of more regulatory agencies will play a role. But as of today, you're absolutely right. EMA and FDA are obviously way ahead of everybody else.
How would you summarize some of the conclusions from your report, and some of your findings, and what you think would be good advice for biosimilar companies to follow, or to be aware of as we go forward?
Yeah, so things that at least we concluded out of the study was that, the obvious things which I think all biosimilar manufacturers already know is that, of course, you need to have a good compatibility package, right? The molecule has to match the innovator molecule in the analytical compatibility package, and your PKPD studies, your clinical compatibility studies, right? So that is kind of obvious, that I think everybody knows. But I think, like I said, the thing which probably people don't realize is that besides the molecule and having the right molecule, it's equally important to have a good process, a well designed process, a well controlled process that can deliver the same product quality consistently over a long period of time, right? And kind of invest those resources in before you apply for approval, so that the regulator knows that, okay, you have done that work, and yes, you have a well controlled process. So I think that's something that a lot of biosimilar manufacturers kind of miss out on, and that's something that I think they need to know, that too is important. Otherwise, everybody's too much focused on the product.
Okay. Other thoughts, Mr. Rathore?
No, I think in general, I would want to see, more biosimilars getting approved in US, which is happening gradually. It's not like it's not happening, but I think, if you look at, in fact, we published a different article in Nature Biotechnology. If you look at prices of all biotherapeutic products all around the world, the US is paying some 5 to 10 times more for any given product than anybody else in the world, right? So, which to me is kind of quite surprising. So I just hope that the U.S. policy ultimately, they make it such that it ultimately lowers the prices of these products, because I think even in the US, not everybody has accessibility to these products, and that's partly because of the high pricing. So if the prices come down, more people can benefit from them. So that's what I would want. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to connect. Thank you very much, Mr. Rathore.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.